Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cornerstone Collective. I'm your host, Jay Brown, and with me today is Angus McLeod,
Hey.
as well as Javen Brown.
Hello.
And we're jumping right in with this idea of commitment. It's the 7 C's. And so we'll start with the scripture today in Matthew 9. It says, "But when he heard it, he said, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners.'" Powerful scripture. Been talking about it this week. Angus, what do you think, man? How does it speak to you?
I love this scripture. I love the idea that this, the place where sinners should be is church. And culturally we tend to think, or I've heard it so many times, I can't walk there because I'll burst into flame or whatever. But the reality is that's the place where you want to see all the cigarette butts and things like that, because that means people are in process, and those people who are needing something more are there.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great to be able to see, to know that you're going to church with broken people, but that there are those that are coming that they don't have to hide their brokenness and those kinds of things. And I think that the more the church understands this, the more we'll see broken people come to the Lord, because they'll see it as a hospital and not a place of judgment.
Yeah, it's a good perspective. I think it's two sides of that same piece is, people are afraid of, this is going to drift us away from what our calling is and an idea of holiness, versus the other side of it, which is like, no, mercy and extending the same mercy we've experienced to others, and not getting on a righteous high horse and thinking that we're better than something else.
Yeah.
But to be those that really, contemplate where we're at. We talk about often here, because we're the intersection of Christ and culture in our conversations with the collective, is that we want to be those who are looking at these 7 C's of God's talking about excellence for our community of faith, which the 7 C's are commitment, community, communication, competence, creativity, compassion, and celebration. Today, we want to jump off of this idea of looking to someone's commitment for Christ. I talked about recently, whenever people who are in the popular media, they get out there and they profess their faith in Christ, and then they start acting not Christ-like. Interesting take with Kanye, with Ye doing an apology, taking out an article or an ad in the New York Times, and being on Vanity Fair, doing these interviews about apologizing to all these anti-Semitic things he's been saying, as well as other things. Javen, what's your take on that?
I mean, I think it was really good that he came out and made like an official public statement about it, because in the past he'd kind of gone like in waves around the idea of whether or not he actually wrestled with being like fully anti-Semitic, or whether or not he was like actually apologetic for the things that he was saying. It was kind of like back and forth over the last 5 or 6 years or so. I think it's great that he's finally taking a step towards being really like truly sorry for the actions that he's taking. And obviously I think with him especially, the entire context of what he's talking about is, it's not like, with a bunch of the statements that he was saying, I think was more aimed towards like people that control most of the corporations, like in like music that surrounds record labels and things like that. So people at the top that was just disproportionately represented by Jews, and that's who he was taking his anger out on.
Right.
But at the same time, he's also dealing with like, he didn't have proper medication that he just stopped taking, and then he was like going through all this psychosis, and like his mom had passed away after he made Donda, and then he goes through a divorce with Kim Kardashian, and like a whole bunch of things kept piling in like an avalanche on top of him. So I think he's finally back in that state of mind where he's ready to like fully be apologetic for what he's doing again, and like maybe start walking out that faith and commitment that he had back in 2020 and 2019 with Christ. So I think it's good that we're kind of seeing that stepping stone play out in public.
Yeah, he's talking a lot about forgiveness and about apologizing truly and having the wrong perspectives and things like that. It's a lot of things we dialogue about. Angus, what's your take? Have you got to take a look at this?
Yeah, I not to the depth that Javen did, so I appreciate that rundown, because I didn't know quite the depth and kind of the timeline of things. But I think that it's great to see that so many people in this public spaces are expressing their faith, and I think that it's neat that culturally it's becoming okay
to have the conversation,
yep. To boldly speak. And I think that what we're finding is we're starting to see more of a divide, right? The people who are on one side versus the other. But now that it's becoming cool or okay to have these discussions, you've got people like Matthew McConaughey who and others who it's not just Kirk Cameron anymore.
Right, sure.
It's other people that are more in the mainstream, and I think that's neat. But with that, they have to understand that they're on a much larger stage than most of us. And so as you know, wherever you're at, come as you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So come to Christ, and that's great. But what I really pray for a lot of these people is that they would be a great witness for Christ, and then that comes through discipleship. So really just praying that these people, wherever they are in their journey, that they would come into contact with. And so I just pray, Lord, put the right people in their path to disciple them, so that as they walk this journey out publicly, it would be for your glory and for their benefit, you know, and not the other way around, where it's tearing down what people see as Christians. Because unfortunately, that's what our perceptions are, what we see, and what we see are viral bites.
Of course.
And so I would really love to see some of these influencers be discipled, so that what comes out of their mouth is pointing towards the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense. Exactly what you're saying is to be those who are encouraging and not just throwing daggers at everything. It's easy to throw daggers and to try and tear someone down or tear them apart, but way different to be ones who are encouraging. It's interesting though, Javen, to your take again, like it was that thought process with Ye putting out this letter now in front of him dropping an album. They're trying to say, is it an apology for plays? Because I know a lot of places were banning his music because it had anti-Semitic things, because it was actually against the Black community, which he's a part of, and obviously supports his music in a big way. And so it's interesting to see kind of this thing. They're saying, are you prompted by this? You know, does he miss being a billionaire? What do you think, man?
I mean, to some degree, I understand the criticism that people have that it's convenient timing. But at the same time, it's like the album promo has technically been around for like months now, and people just keep seeing it push back and push back. So there's no real say of whether or not he's actually going to drop this Friday or the next Friday or the Friday after that until he actually does. So to say it's part of an album rollout, I think it's just because of how convenient the timing is for it. But we've also seen, like in the past, he actually went and apologized, like, and had a full one-on-one conversation with the Jewish rabbi.
Right.
He was like going back in good faith and trying to reestablish that connection with the Jewish community, which he did behind closed doors. And then there was just an article made about it. And then I think over time that like friendship or sense of understanding between them has just been reestablished to the point where he feels enough, he feels bad enough about what he did in the past to make like a formal public apology to everybody about it, just because of everybody else that was hurt by the actions that he said, him going on shows like Alex Jones and like spewing a whole bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, even like popular podcasts that you would see, like, you know, like that are usually like for the Black community or from that voice. And you'd see him just like going hard at the Black community itself, and then at Jewish people and all these other things. And it was like, wow, man. And then him wearing like diamond, like a necklace that would be like a swastika, and you're like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And you know, because so many Jewish people were in the diamond community, like, who made this for him, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's going on with the situation? It's crazy.
Yeah, what's crazy. I think a bunch of it is just like his anger at the way that systematic things are built within the United States to kind of like suppress certain minorities or keep them within like a socioeconomic threshold. And I think part of his thought process back then was that the Jews are keeping him in the Black community in that position, but he's also mad at the Black community for not recognizing what's happening and still being like tainted by all these other things, and like being so interested in what's happening culturally to the point where we like glorify all these things that are like material, and then we're not actually focusing on what's gonna help us continue to survive or like enrich ourselves as a culture. And
which
like
he had definitely been a part of for a very long time. I mean, so much of his music was about that kind of stuff as well.
I know, but it's just like over time, I think he finally starts to realize what actually matters within his music, which is why kind of after he did Jesus is King, because I think it was like a video with him and Joel Osteen yesterday where he got up and he was talking about indoctrination and how it's like really bad for the upcoming generation, and how we need to aim to kind of reestablish these core values within the upcoming generation so that they're not. Yeah, but this was back in like 2019, 2020.
Oh, okay, earlier.
So, and I mean, he's gone through a whole like wave of things that have happened. There were thought processes that he might have been replaced at some point, at least to the public eye. So I think
they cloned him and made a guy like I don't think you can make another Ye.
No, I don't think so. But maybe as far as like somebody that looked like him that was just walking out there, maybe. But as far as like music, he's finally kind of back and doing stuff. This is more of the usual Kanye that you're used to seeing, even though he goes by Ye now, which I think is also indicative of like a personal transformation that's been within him.
But it is interesting because you see such a departure, even though obviously he clearly has a style and a pick and all those kind of things of like who he is. He's very much an artist in that way. And, you know, a lot of people that are out there on the fringe, man, they're out there on the fringe. That's their mentality. That's all their stuff. So they're wavering all over. So obviously we don't support any of those anti-Semitic things that he said or anything of those kind of to this or, you know, against the black community. But it is interesting to try to see him coming back to his faith roots and stuff, as Angus was talking about, and connecting back that way. However, you have the other side of it with his artistic side, where his wife, who is a model and other things, who looks very similar to his ex-wife, you know, she's walking around pretty much wearing transparent things and other things like this, like on the regular, so much so that they've had to ask her to leave like other public events, which is saying something because people kind of dress scantily clad to those things anyway, which is why, you know, Christian community doesn't mess with that stuff. And so it's been very interesting to see like how all these pieces come together. You have him wearing giant oversized stuff and her wearing like cling wrap or some crazy thing. So it's pretty wild to see how these two pieces come together. And I'd love to see an alignment that happens in him that is different than what we've seen in the previous 3-4 years, which would be really cool.
Absolutely.
But well, we're pulling for you, man, and with you for you. Want Ye and anybody who's on that journey to live for Christ. So pulling for you in that way.
Amen.
Hey, one of the kind of comedy influencers that's out there in the Christian realm is a guy, Shama for Reels. I don't know if you guys have seen him. He's a pretty great guy. He's got some dreads and stuff. And he's talking about, he's on this rant. I think I sent it to you guys. He's like, what happened to our pastors?
Yes.
Our pastors, they used to be fat and uncool and old. And he goes on this whole thing saying, if your pastor is not fat, if he's like working in the gym and stuff, you need to find another church.
Yeah.
He's like, if your pastor has a sneaker collection, you need to find another church.
Yeah.
You know, if he's cool, if he knows what's going on, you need to find another church. I was like, come on, man. Yeah. It's not very nice. Yeah. Plus, I have a sneaker collection, so then I'd be real in trouble, and everybody would leave the church. What'd you guys' take, man?
That part stood out to me. The leave your if you have a sneaker collection or your pastor does. I thought it was really funny. You know, I think it's joking, but I think that there's something that like we have to take a look at that, because underneath the jokes and everything, there is a culture. There's something true about it.
Right.
And well, yes, I understand the not necessarily being cool and trying to fit in. For the case of fitting in, I think that there's something to be said for that. But at the same time, you know, as we're preaching about this body being a temple and those kinds of things, we should be leading the charge. We should be
taking care of ourselves.
You know,
better.
if we're talking to people about soul care and mind care, we should also be talking about body care. You know, and because God created us like that, and so you know. Daniel's appearance and his health was what made him stand out, you know, in the nation that he was called to
in the Old Testament.
Yeah. And so I think the same thing should be true for us. And so as pastors, I think that we should do our best to lead the charge. If not, showing that we're making effort, you know, but not just giving it up and saying, you know, it's only fellowship for me. You know?
Sure.
So I think that we should be healthy, but at the same time, if that's where people are, is at the gym, minister to them at the gym.
For sure.
If it's at a picnic, then do that, or a community event. But I don't think that, I think it is kind of funny, like just you can look at some pastors and go, oh yeah, that's a family, you know, that's a kids pastor. That's a, you know, that's a lead pastor. That's a worship pastor.
Just on how they look.
Just on how they look and dress. And so I think that there is that, but be yourself. You know, that's really the main thing is if that is you, and you know, I mean, you naturally like shoes. You didn't start collecting shoes because you became a pastor and you're trying to fit in with your community, right? Right. That was there, but people recognize that and they're like, oh, he appreciates the same things. And so you go to church with people who are like you. So I think not changing who you are to match your culture, but, you know, allowing a culture that's accepting of you.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, you know, there's always a joke about being full gospel. Yeah. And about being that kind of shape. And that's kind of what he's saying is like, you should be spending your time, you know, eating meals at people's houses and all this stuff, like, which I thought was pretty funny. That's very cultural, obviously, to the Black church. It's less so in the way that I grew up. I mean, as a PK, like we didn't have a lot of that. People wouldn't invite us over very often. They did. It was very kind, and we were appreciative of that. Yeah. But there is, to his point, a lot of eating late. a lot of those other things. And it's like, yeah, you know, like we would always call that fellowship, like we're having fellowship, and that's where you have like a meal. Javen, you grew up where when we were in Alexandria, we hosted a really big one of those like once a month in Alexandria. We'd feed like 200 people, man.
Yeah,
it was
the
like
agape meals.
Had the agape fellowship. Yeah, what'd you think about that?
Cool. I mean, it was great. It's always great when you get to have a really big event as a church community, and I think the idea of sharing food just kind of encompasses everything that you want out of really bonding with your church community, because there's just something about people sitting together, kind of putting aside any differences they might have in the moment and just eating together, breaking the bread. I mean, even for Thanksgiving, that's a reason why it's such a big holiday for us, is because despite everything that was going on with the way that we had pilgrims over here and like Native Americans, like disputes between land or who had access to what food and et cetera, it was just like that was all kind of set aside on the one day where they finally decide to break bread and share a meal together. It's not only symbolic kind of people joining in union of something, but I think also just the act of eating kind of just calms the body and really like helps temper people down. I mean, we know that because of things like Ramadan, where people will just be like on really high gear all the time if they don't have food. Yeah, exactly.
And then the iftar, when they break the fast, like in the Muslim world, they would actually share that together.
Exactly.
And there's like a piece about that.
100%.
And so you see that obviously that's an old Middle Eastern thing. That's what you see Jesus obviously in the Middle East, you know, in Jewish communities, it's very much how they live that way too. So that's why they had criticized him so much. We just recently talked about this at here at Cornerstone, but they criticized him so much because he sat and ate with sinners. He sat and ate with tax collectors. And he was like breaking the bread with people, like sharing life with these people that needed, as we talked about here, they needed someone who was going to come and help them.
Yeah.
So huge deal, man.
Absolutely.
So it's okay to have some fellowship, but watch your health and things like that. Hey, you guys know my brother, Jeremy, shout out to him. When we were young, we were going to something, and my folks talk about this story where we stayed late. We would always be here late, man. We'd be at every service late. We had midweek late. We had Sunday night. We'd be here late. We were hanging out, and we were supposed to, they said, oh, we're just going to fellowship here for a little bit. And so me and my brother were like waiting and waiting. We hang out by the car. We hang out in the car, out of the car. We just wait forever. My parents be talking forever. And so we get back in the car, and my brother was like a little bit sad. And because my parents told us like, hey, you just need to wait for a minute. We're going to fellowship. And so they meant talk with each other. When my brother got in the car, and they're like, what's the matter with you? And he was kind of like, I didn't get no fellowship. Because he meant food, man. Yeah. This is a thin child who is tall. He needs food. He's going to pass away without it. Exactly. So I just thought that was hilarious. I didn't get no fellowship.
Yeah. Oh, the life of PK.
There it is. So yeah, shout out to Sham for Reals. I thought that was really funny. Obviously I do like sneakers. I do have a stack of them, but we've been talking about this recently about being good stewards and about, hey, there's nothing wrong with you having nice, good things. If that's not a priority for you, that takes you away from your generosity, from being obedient to the Lord, from the goals for your family. If you start living that way where you're sacrificing all those things for a hobby then of course that's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. But to the other side of it is that, hey, if it's something that could just be something fun and you enjoy, and it becomes cream on top of what you're already doing instead of the other way around, living for those things. So I think that's a really good balance to understand.
I think it's also powerful when you have those nice things. It's a testament to what the Lord will do with less, because when you do have those things and people know, just through one-on-one conversation, we don't broadcast it and all that kind of stuff, but through one-on-one conversation, you know that not only are you aligning biblically and then you're giving sacrificially and all of those things, but the Lord is still providing that you're meeting all of the needs and you still get some of the wants, which shows that our Lord cares about, he cares about that stuff. Yeah. It's not just about the needs. It's not just about the basics. He wants us to thrive and all of that. And then when we do that and people see that, they go, wow, that I can have that, because here I am struggling on 100% and you're making it and having extra on 75% or 80 or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great point. Yep. Let it be so, Lord. We need love to thrive, be able to be more generous. So.
Amen.
Hey, I saw a post that was talking about how Christian worship music is changing the theology of churches. I thought this was interesting because of how prolific Hillsong Music, Bethel, Elevation, all these other songwriters are, and a lot of evangelicals, despite what they believe as far as like if they're Calvinist or this or that, more and more of them are worshiping like Pentecostals, which I thought was very, very interesting. And they're wanting to feel the Spirit of God in their place instead of kind of more of the hymns or some older style music, which was more in line with some of these other other evangelical places. You grew up in a different spot than how we are here as Pentecostal. So what was your experience like versus how we experience it here?
Exactly what you were describing. So I grew up Episcopalian, just up the road at the church here in Litchfield, and again they did hymns and all of that stuff. It was on an organ that I'm pretty sure came from the Old Testament with that organ player.
That's awesome.
They walked straight out of the desert into another desert and played the organ. But it was very much, there's a stand-up comic who he kind of talks about how just, these wealthy religions have some of the most dull and boring songs.
Right.
And that's very much what it was. They're not Spirit-filled. At one point, they may have filled the church with that presence of God.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's what happened, and why they've lasted so long is because at one point they did have an effect.
Right.
But just like culture changes, so do our music needs and the way we worship and all that stuff. The first time I went to a Pentecostal service at Victory Assembly down in Tucson, before I went in, Annie prepped me because she went to one of our services first, and she was like, "What is this? Like, this is so boring."
Right.
And it was just very routine. And so she told me, she's like, "Okay, when we go in there, just so you know, people are probably going to close their eyes. They're going to lift their hands. Some people may dance around. You may see a flag or two." And I'm like, what am I getting into?
Is this NASCAR? What's happening?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are there flags?
But, and I've kind of talked about this before. The love before I got in was incredible. There's just a different feeling and expectation. But then the worship was incredible. I had never experienced anything like it. There was a different feeling to the music. And it was more than just drums and guitar and great vocals. There, you could feel the Spirit in the music. And so I 100% identify with that. And especially when you're brand new to it,
right?
Man, you get all the chill bumps and all the feelings and stuff because
people of God, the presence of God, and the people of God.
I mean, it's like walking out into the wind for the first time.
Sure.
You've heard about it before. You've heard about the breath of God. You've heard about it. And that was my thing is I didn't know that there was a living God. And when I came into Pentecost, that's when I really experienced the living God who has a relationship that I don't just go and sit and listen to, on a weekend.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would say this, I do really appreciate the depth of the theology that are in those old hymns. That's a lot of how people learned their theology was through those things. And that's also a criticism by some in Christianity about the modern songs that we sing because, there's kind of a joke, a meme you've seen is like, this is a joke about, Christian music. This is a joke about Christian music. This is the idea is that we're repeating things over and over and over instead of having different lines or different depth to what we're writing. And so there is that. Obviously, in the chorus, you're just going to repeat more of those things more over and over. But there are those things that whenever you get into a verse that do have some depth to them, it just depends on. It doesn't hit the person in their musical flavor, their choice. Whereas the younger demographic, which grew up with rock music, which grew up with all sorts of different variation of that, they like those elements. And so I think it doesn't matter what kind of a vein of evangelical that you're coming to, that's why they're embracing all these things. And I've even seen where contemporary Catholic services are using some, maybe not these exact songs, but songs that are in this kind of style, which is very interesting because you have that's the liturgy you can get is the Catholic liturgy. So it's like, man, as far as that goes, as far as like, how they've always done it, for them to embrace some of these elements, it's very insightful.
Yeah, and I really like, especially the songs that they use scripture as a lot of their base, and they put scripture to music, because, again, that's another way that we can learn and get some of the deep stuff, but also as you're singing, what took me a while to understand is that worship is a prayer. Yeah. And so when you're singing those things, you're singing those prayers out, and you're singing them over you, and so it has an effect on you.
Absolutely.
And so so when you're singing scripture over yourself and your people and all of that, that's powerful. So I love to see more of that too. Because then you don't have that minus the depth and substance.
Yeah, it's good. Javen, what's your take, man? You've kind of grown up in this stuff and been native to it, but you've also seen how we have done that in variations across the world and how it kind of took a different flavor where it'd be maybe just one person singing with just vocal or maybe a guitar. And then we've had more of a worship team effect and then like full blown production like we do here. What's been your experience?
I mean, I don't think there's really an issue with kind of any way that people want to worship in whatever denomination they want. I think the only reason why there's such like a big difference is kind of the same reason why people have like such differing music tastes. It's like some people want to listen to pop, some people want to listen to rock, some people want to listen to classical, some people want to listen to like jazz, or some people want to listen to hip hop, things like that. Mm-hmm. I think the emergence of Pentecostal music, especially through Bethel and Hillsong and other people like you're talking about, is carried out so much by the fact that the new generation likes the spirit behind the music primarily, but also because it just sounds different and it sounds like something they're more used to because of how much or because of how readily available that kind of technology and that sound has been to us since we've grown up.
Yeah.
Especially for millennials. Style. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And with like hints of rock, I'm thinking of like Lion of Judah or songs like that. I forget who the band is behind that. It might be it.
Yeah, Elevation.
Yeah, Elevation. Yeah. I think it's some of their older stuff though, but yeah, like with elements of like electric guitar, things like that. Mm-hmm. And if that suits you, that's great for you. I also think not to discredit hymns, because when hymns are performed with like a genuine choir that has really put time into things, it's some of the most beautiful music you've ever heard in your life. Yeah. And the spirit behind hymns isn't taken away at all. I just think people are moving past it because they kind of find like drabness or monotony within repetition of things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's also just kind of grown apart from the modern sound of music. So people feel such a disconnect from the things that they're singing on Sunday, but then also the songs that they're hearing on Christian radio, and then like the music that they'll listen to besides that might be secular. So I think the reason why everybody's kind of shifting to that is more just the way that it sounds, not necessarily like the fact that there is more of a spirit behind this kind of music. I think to each their own, but yeah, definitely. I think it's not a bad thing at all. I think it is a good thing, but it's also not to discredit any other way that a denomination may worship. I
agree. I think that one of the things that is happening is that as the worship directors and worship ministers get younger, they're going to embrace whatever style it is that's been influential to them. So even oldies, well, oldies when we were growing up was like, 70s. Yeah. Well, that's not. Like now oldies is like 90s, 2000s is oldies to the younger generation. So as these people that are directing are in their 20s and 30s, it's going to change how they do what they do. And even the way the arrangements of even older songs. So we do a lot of that here. We'll do like a hymn mashup where we'll have like a hymn connected to a chorus, like a modern chorus and like a remix. And we did one of those this Sunday, and we'll do more of those. And what it does is kind of tries to bridge the gap from an older generation to a younger generation, because we see ourselves as generational, multicultural, generational. And we want to be those people that anyone from any phase of life and any ethnicity and all those things can all come and be welcome and feel welcome and warm. And so that's been one of the things that we have intentionally done, where we've included one like every other week or so, just to make sure that we have a little touch to that. And man, how crazy it would be if like someone's been in church for like 3-4 years, they know 0 hymns because just no one sings them. And I think that's probably pretty true in most churches.
Oh yeah.
If you didn't grow up in the old time, I mean, even if they would know Amazing Grace, I don't know that they would. But you think of like a song that was real famous, like Majesty by Jack Hayford, super famous back. And that was like kind of the newer, that was still considered a chorus, but it's like Majesty, we worship his majesty. It's like that kind of has that sing-songy style that was closer to the hymns than it would be the modern stuff. Yeah. And people were big about that. But if you go into like crown him with many crowns, it's like such a different style. It's like choral music that most people, that's not their take.
Well, what's funny is when we bring out some of those older songs like Old Rugged Cross or something like that, great. Some of the newer people who haven't heard that, and I was in this, at first, you hear that, it's like, man, that's an incredible song. You're like, that's from
Yeah, it's
generations
like 300 years
ago.
old.
Yeah.
You know, and people are like, "Wow, that's a new song." It's like, it's new to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's really fun watching as people discover the old with the new, because it helps to develop an appreciation.
Yeah.
You know, so that we just don't cast it all out.
Well, we've never really been a hymnal church, even from our inception. We're coming up on 40 years this year, which is crazy as a church. So thanks be to God for his consistency and his, you know, in man, we just feel all the blessing and all of the support of that the Lord has done through this community of faith. We're very, very thankful. But yeah, 40 years, man. Even then, if you went all the way back to 1986, it's still thinking about how, man, like even then, like that was clearly already in the new era. Like it was past some of those other things. And so we've never been a church that's had pews. We've never had a church that's had hymnals. Whereas I did go to churches like that and did know how to read a hymnal, but a modern churchgoer probably doesn't know how to pick it up. And unless you read music or studied music, you wouldn't know like how to go from stanza to stanza and how to jump through the book itself. Yeah. And it was interesting because as a kid, we would like pick them up because we'd be bored, laying on, you know, people talking, fellowshipping. So we'd be hanging out on a pew or under a pew or whatever we're doing. And we'd eventually get so bored, you take the hymnal back out and you're looking through and you do, you know, the name of the hymn plus in the bathroom or whatever and just start cracking up like, because like some of them were, you know, kind of like it's old timey talk. So it didn't have innuendo the way we did in modern day.
Yeah.
So we'd be like, that's hilarious. You know, kind of thinking, throwing these old jokes. But man, it's interesting. I'm thankful and I just ask the Lord for more of his creativity, for people that are gifted to be songwriters and for the future, that the depth of our songs going forward would mimic that of the past and would draw us near to him.
Absolutely. Amen.
Hey, we're talking about also what's been happening in Iran. Politically, I know there's been upheaval. There was a march with over 100,000 people that they estimate were marching in the streets, even after the government had there'd been video release of the government opening fire on their own people, obviously, which are they're fighting against essentially those who are in power in their government. And it's very much tied to the Ayatollahs and the people that the very strong Islamic rule that's been upon them, and so they're rejecting that. And a lot of people have been equating that to the rise of the church. So that's been very interesting because we've seen how many of those people have been put in prison and other things like that for their faith, and how people are just kind of, boom, being public with their faith right now. Very interesting. Have you guys had to take a look at that in Iran?
I haven't gotten to look too much into it, but you know what I will say is it's exactly what we know to be true, that with suppression, the church starts to grow. And there's no other religion that I'm aware of that professes freedom like Christ. And so with that profession and with that practice of your faith, you know, freedom naturally starts to come out. And I think that we're starting to see that across the world as people are being less afraid, and more willing to be public, regardless of what those consequences are. And I think that as we continue to see that, you know, so that's what I'm not necessarily praying for peace, because peace between two sides that are fundamentally different and don't get along, that's not necessarily a good thing. Right, so I'm praying for freedom and freedom in Christ, and that the kingdom would go forward, that the Lord's kingdom would go forward, because with that, eventually there comes peace and all of that. Yeah.
Man, it's such a hard thing to watch. Like, you know, obviously innocent people going through it, and so we do pray that they would experience freedom. We do want them to have peace in their homes and security and all those other things. But man, the Lord help us as we be those who pray for the church in Iran and for other places around the world that just need the Lord's touch, and pray for the persecuted church at large, and have that as being a part of our daily prayer and part of our hearts, and being those who just support them in prayer. So, hey, one of the things that we saw recently is that the UK blocked a Walk with Jesus march, which has happened before. They've had these marches, have been peaceable, but they blocked it this year. And some people are equating that to the new leadership being Muslim. And they're saying that they didn't want to a Walk for Jesus march or Walk with Jesus march because it would provoke Muslims. This is what's been written in some of the UK newspapers and things like that. What's your guys' take on that? What do you think about that? It's interesting.
Yeah. I think just kind of following along with everything politically that's happening in England, it definitely seems like there is a massive shift culturally in terms of who's actually domestically making up their population, because we see a huge influx of immigrants that are coming over. We also see a big response of native English people that are like, oh, get them all out of here, because we don't want to fundamentally change as a society. We want to be rooted within English culture. That's like where our pride sake comes from.
Right. But these people, many of them are citizens.
Yeah, I know.
So that's not the same conversation.
Yeah, or identify as being actually English. They just happen to be Muslim people.
Right.
So it once again, with immigration always comes a difficult conversation between kind of how you define a citizen versus how you define like cultural differences and things like that, and what that looks like for systems of law. I definitely think it is interesting though how they will stop a Jesus march, but at the same time, I've also seen like they're not willing, or they're willing to not stop marches that are like against immigration in the UK. So I don't know, to say that they're fundamentally supporting like a Muslim agenda going forward, that it's all going to turn to Sharia law, I think is jumping the gun a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Until we see like something substantial happen over there, I don't think you can make that assumption right now. But looking at all this, it's definitely interesting to see there's a really big conflict happening between all these different groups within the UK, and everybody kind of just wants a voice to be heard. But also there's so much inner commotion about what that needs to look like in terms of how we treat certain cultures, how that culture's ideology should be represented within the law, that it kind of just turns into a whole bunch of soup that nobody can really decipher. It's like alphabet soup practically. So
yeah, they're wading through it right now for sure, and that's definitely a thing that they're having to deal with.
Yeah.
Similar in France. France has its own set of things that they're dealing with, and they, because essentially what it is reverse colonization. We lived in France for years, and so man, the situation in France right now is a mess. There's a bunch of things going on similar to some of our cities in America, where it's like, hey, this city, which was great, well, think of San Francisco, you think of parts of New York, where it's like now the fentanyl crisis and other things have taken over, and it's so sad because these people need help, they need assistance. Similarly, you have people in France who are immigrants who don't have a place because their system is not up to par to give these people who they've given refugee status to, they haven't given them housing. So they're setting up and camping like on the road, on the street, and other places like that throughout their country. So it's very, very interesting to see how these two things are going to come together. You saw that obviously in New York, the same thing happening with us, especially during COVID and other things like that. So it's not just a them problem, it's a us as people problem, and trying to navigate what that looks like. But I thought it was interesting that they weren't allowing a Christ-centered thing to happen, whereas obviously the LGBTQ agenda, they let that happen. They've had other marches that have been for other kind of faith things. That's been happening, and they've had no problem. And that's been really insightful to be like, okay, how does this work? What does this look like? So whenever the government gets involved in it, it definitely becomes something that's very, very interesting and challenging at times. Hey, one thing that I just thought about that I hadn't got to you guys about was that in Colombia, there were government officials who recently were giving awards to satanic church leaders. Did you guys see this?
I did not.
It was a very insightful thing, especially with us just being in Colombia and seeing the revival of power of the Spirit of God happening there amongst people. Really interesting that one, most of the time government doesn't give any kind of awards to church leaders unless they're doing some kind of civic actions. But for them to give like these awards to the satanic church was very, very interesting. At least that's the way it was reported.
Yeah.
And so the people were hooded. They were kind of hooded in purple hoods, the video I watched, and it looked legit. I couldn't see it being anything that's not legit, but man, it was kind of interesting. Do you see anything there, Jevin? You can pull something up?
No, I was looking back kind of detail wise. It reminds me kind of what happened with Tim, what's his name? With Tim Walz in Minnesota, how like I think it was a satanic church gave him an award or something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just the fact that people are willing to accept this definitely raises a bunch of questions, or like giving awards to satanic leaders like that is also definitely like a huge red flag going forward. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like when I first read that, I was like, there's no way that this like openly happened and then nobody's really like questioning it. Right. But at the same time, I think we're really seeing a bunch of people kind of put the pieces together on what the agenda is behind most of the elites in today's society. It kind of all revolves around satanic worship, or some people call it Saturn worship, things like that. it's all basically an agenda for the exact same thing.
Yeah,
we
Molech
see it,
or Baal or whatever.
Molech, Baal. We see it represented through like Freemasons and like symbols of Freemasonry all across the world throughout different societies, things like that. It's very interesting how there's a bunch of very similar symbols that all these societies and all these government officials tend to use, whether it be like hand signals, whether it be the number 33, whether it be like things like referencing the Illuminati or certain code words that they use like within press conferences and things like that to allude to something else that maybe only a particular group of people knows. I think people are starting to catch on to that more. The fact that this happens kind of out in the open and nobody really questions it shows kind of how far gone we are as a society. Is like, where do we draw the line in terms of like actually supporting what's right for the state, and then like really asking moral and ethical questions that like of how critical we need to be of our leaders. And I think in Colombia especially, it's like, I mean, within that region of the world, there's already a lot of kind of chaos going around.
Well, there's strong Catholicism roots to place, obviously all of Latin America. And so it's really interesting to me, you know, more places have got more and more secular, which we see obviously be a trend.
Yeah.
And then almost anti any kind of religion. And we saw that happen even in France when we were there, where we experienced a ton of stuff that rules were really made for churches. They're actually made against other people who are praying in public and other things outside mosque. But then they start making all these rules. Well, it affects us as a church because now we can't do it either. And so they're actually they didn't care. They were like, yeah, we're going to do, this is the new rules. They were anti any kind of religion. Yeah. So interesting to see, like, not just be anti-religion, but actually jump the other direction and then like be giving awards away is very, very strange. So I just thought that was really weird. Obviously, it'd be better to know the context in which this was done. If it's like, you know, they gave a chunk of money and therefore it's like, this, oh, thanks for that. But why you would give an award and not, you know, like to each person and not just a plaque or something, and why they're wearing hoods and all, it's just really strange, man.
But I think it's also indicative of how the enemy works, right? I mean, so because it starts off with these little innocuous things where it's like, okay, this little, you know, where most people are going to say, oh, it's this little ridiculous church who gives some meaningless award to a governor here or there, and people kind of laugh it off and shrug it off and all of that. But we have to remember, you know, now you mention the devil and people picture a red guy with a pitchfork and a pointed tail. Well, that's not necessarily what he looks like.
Right, of course.
You know, and so he's operating over centuries and generations. And so he doesn't get us to just jump off. He moves the line slowly. Yeah. You know, and so, and what he does is it's a frog in a pot. You know, he moves the line a little bit till we get comfortable with that. And then another caricature and another thing that all seems innocuous until you're finally living in a reality where you're like, what, how did we get here? I would have never signed up for this if you had told me at the beginning. This is, you know, and that's how he operates in our life through sin. And that's how we see him operate in our cultures and things like that. And, you know, we saw that he tempted Jesus with offering all the power and all of these things. And to think that these people in charge are not being offered some things and well, you know, good point. And now for them to be able to publicly say it because the line has gotten close enough where they can admit it. And now we can have some leaps forward as far as, you know, the kingdom of darkness is concerned, because now it's out in the open.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to that end, it just rings with us how much we need to be those people that are walking in the truth of God and participating in our local government and being those who are a voice. And because it's not that the fact that they went in, they were connected to a nonprofit. Obviously, we're a nonprofit. People have gone to our events and things like that. But most of the events they come to is things that we're doing in the community for the benefit of the community. So it'd be interesting to see how they're bridging into this other space. And so for us to be active in that way and have a voice in our community, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Amen.
Being light in the darkness. So, hey, one of the things we do want to talk about today is it's been very popped off this week, was the Bethel Church drama. Bethel Church is a church out of Northern California, a very dynamic church, a very charismatic church. And we sing their music and had people that have gone to their events that they host. We've learned a lot from them on the media side and a lot of the access they gave to people in how they do what they do for their conferences and their video, audio, all that stuff. Like, we've learned a lot from them being transparent. And also they're people who try to support and move forward with the works and the gifts of the Spirit. So it's really interesting because this week, on this past Sunday, here at the beginning of January in 2026, they actually put out a public letter from their leadership. And it was actually, they talked about it in their services. They put it out on their Bethel Music, their social. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, what's going on here? I thought, there was something really bad that had happened within them. And there is some things that had happened. There was a person who essentially the leadership, Bill Johnson, Chris, and Dan, the three of them, along with Danny Silk, they made a letter to an open letter to their community of faith, which I guess there's a lot of people that are Bethel aligned churches across the world as well. And they have a person who's named Shawn Bolz, who is actually like a teacher, speaker, author, and had been interacting kind of in the prophetic with like Bethel School and some other things that have been happening. Apparently, back all the way to 2020, there were sexual allegations and also him using social media to find out things about people and then using that to give them a prophetic word.
Yeah.
So it was both and. These allegations were both and. And so it didn't really come to clarity, but what they did take action is they took kind of quiet action against it. So they took them off all of their teaching stuff, and they have a channel online and all these other things. They took him out of their bookstore. They stopped supporting his ministry, but they didn't ever cut ties with him publicly. And so it made a problem where now they didn't tell the church 5 to 6 years ago. And now they're kind of coming clean, and it came clean because somebody uncovered it and went on a podcast and started talking about all the hurt that this person who was aligned with their network, what they started to do. So, or they're alleged to do. And so very, very interesting. Did you guys get a chance to see any of that stuff? What's your take on it, Javen?
I mean, I hadn't heard anything about this until you just told me.
Oh,
I
interesting.
think that's pretty crazy if that's true, that they tried to keep it kind of under wraps for that long. Because I think being transparent with your community of faith is like the best thing that you can do in that situation. Is even if they are just allegations and they're not true, still, I mean, like all the things surrounding it, it's better to distance yourself or to at least tell your community what's happening rather than to kind of just leave them in the dark about everything, only to find out 5 or 6 years later through a different source that goes on a podcast. Just makes it exponentially worse for them, because now it looks like you're still supporting him in secret despite knowing what he's done. Whether or not that was proven true or not, it just does not look good on your part, and especially for the leadership behind Bethel. Another thing it reminds me of is kind of what happened in the Houston family.
In
Hillsong. Yeah, in Hillsong. It's just how there was like a notion that Brian Houston might have known about what was happening with his father, and like he just kept it under wraps or didn't say anything about it. Obviously, he was found not guilty of everything that happened. But I mean, yeah, like once you really just start to push stuff back, hoping that people don't find out what happens, everything eventually comes to light.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much worse for you. So I think just being transparent with your community of faith is really the best step that you can take in order to kind of get everybody on board, and also to build or to maintain that sense of trust and authenticity as church leadership, because we're all not perfect, and we know that we all fall short in some way of the glory of God.
Of course, that's right.
But if you're kind of actively supporting, or at least making it seem like you support something that's directly against it, your church really won't ever trust you again in that regard.
Well, and the complicated thing, I just want to very much clarify, it was not the impropriety of the pastors there. So Bill or Chris or Dan or Danny. And so it wasn't those people or the worship team or any of those people that are famous kind of from that church, that it wasn't any of them. But this is someone associated to them. So it should be like none of our pastoral staff here, but we have speakers that come in from time to time, and one of them was a person that was doing this, and they found out about it, and they didn't really say, hey, we're no longer associating here. They just kind of cut ties and just kind of let it be. But what happened was then now people, because of he had been on their platform so much, their connected churches in places like Europe and other places gave this person a platform. So they gave Shawn a platform, and so a lot of that stuff happened within his organization for people that were part of that, who were like, oh, well, he's got this kind of blessing, and I agree with Bethel, and so I'm going to come work for Shawn. And so they had some of these kind of accusations happening. And so it's not our heart at all to throw daggers or try to pick a dot at someone's eye when we have a plank in our own. That's not what we're talking about. It's more about the concept of how do we navigate this better as the church. And I think that they did the right thing in taking away his platform from him early. That was the right thing. But now the wrong side of it, which from their perspective, this is their words, what they're sharing. They said that they felt they had done wrong by not coming forward and just being like, listen, this is the allegations, and like this is someone we hold in as in community with us. These are the allegations. So these are the reasons that we're going to stop having him be a voice until things can be clarified. And just having that conversation helps things a lot. So because it puts it out there and like the light comes to it, and then people understand where everything is. I think it would have prevented some of the things that did happen with people joining the organization after the fact, kind of seeing the blessing from the past. And that's kind of where they kind of fell into this. Connection to us, interestingly, is someone like Shawn Smith, who's come and he's come and spoken here with our church. He's an evangelist, powerful guy, great communicator. And him and his wife, who both speak, they were friends with Shawn. And so, but not living in the same place, not interacting in that way, more like oh yeah, we're homies from back when. And so that's kind of their connection. So they put out some public stuff, and others are putting out public things because they were seen connected to them and seen on the same stages together and seeing, maybe writing excerpts in books and things like that. So it's like, man, all those things have power because you're essentially learning your credibility to somebody when you write a forward in their book or whatever's going on. And so Shawn and his wife, they both said, yeah, no, we didn't have anything to do. We have no knowledge of this. So our heart is that people aren't going to be abused by the church, obviously. And they said they want to see the clarity of what's happening come forward. So they're not, damning or passing judgment on Shawn as well. But I love what they said in Shawn Smith's statement. He said, Shawn Smith's statement talking about Shawn Bolz, he said, we value holiness and purity. This is something that's core to us. And so he said, anything that's not in alignment with that is something that we're not in alignment with, which I thought was really powerful. I was like, man, what a thing to say, taking the opportunity to do that. Man, it's never fun having to deal with a mess.
Yeah.
It's never fun. So, man, my heart goes out to Bethel Church. My heart goes out to Pastor Bill, to Shawn, and to others, Shawn Smith, and to others, and even Shawn, who's going through this situation, with accusations and other things. Man, we pray that the truth comes out, and we pray that those who've been hurt find restoration and healing in Jesus' name. And we just pray, man, that there would be a peace amongst them as they try to navigate this as a church. Difficult season.
Yeah.
They want to take a look at this response of what we talked about previously with protesters breaking into a church in Minneapolis, and with the media person, Don Lemon, coming and being a part of it. He was actively a part of the demonstration right in the middle of a church service in Minneapolis. We talked about that and talked about how crazy that is as a concept. Did you guys see some of the black pastors' responses to this?
Oh yeah.
What did you think of that?
Just saying, don't come here. We don't play that way. I think that that same pastor that I'm referencing, he's just saying, Don Lemon, don't come here because we won't put up with that. But he's, they're also talking about this kind of a thing would not be tolerated in a Muslim church and in a Jewish synagogue or in any of these places. And so I think that it's important for us to remember that. I mean, I think that that's what's great about America is that we can bring constructive criticism, even if it's just criticism. But at the same time, you have the same right to, that's what makes this great is the back and forth. But when it only is one-sided, that's when we get into lots of problems.
Yeah, that's true. And, them interrupting, them being outside on a public street, way different than going onto private property and breaking into a service and trying to make their agenda be the agenda. That's not right in any context. And they're right. If that would have happened in a different situation, a different house of worship, there would have been a lot different ramifications. And even the one they chose, you know what I mean? If they would have rolled that up in Arizona, man, that wouldn't have worked out for them. No. Not at all. Because all of us have safety teams and other things and take that stuff real serious. They're not going to do that to those guys, obviously, to the pastors that we're sharing. He's like, you didn't put money into this church. You haven't sacrificed. It hasn't been your time here. You want to come and hijack what we're doing. We're here with a purpose. We're here with the rights to do this. We do so in legality. We do so freedom. And our agenda is this, to worship God. You're not going to come and hijack us. And I was like, come on, man. Preach. Yeah. Some good stuff. Javen, what did you think, man? Did you get a chance to see that?
No, I did not. But just, hearing about it is like, I definitely think, I don't really think there's any problem behind what he's saying if he's stating the truth of what actually would happen if they really went up to another church that is ready to defend their ground. But unlike somebody that's maybe a little more passive. And it's not a knock at either type of church that you have. It's just saying that eventually people will pay for their consequences, or people will face consequences for their actions one way or another. Yeah. So I think, man, if you really go down that route with protesting and like you're really defending everything that's happening, you're playing a dangerous game with what's going on.
Yeah, nothing wrong with like having your voice be heard, but it's all in the right context.
Yeah.
It's all in the right spot. Like that's something that we value, you know, to your point, that it's the give and take of like, let's let the ideas win. You know what I mean? So, but to go into a place like that, man, completely against that, against the concept. So very thankful that people were vocal, because what they were seeing, because Don Lemon is a black man, they were seeing that as an issue of color or race. And that wasn't the case at all. And what we see is very much, it was a multicultural congregation they were a part of. And people that came in were multicultural. It was just this whole give and take, but it became some of that as a talking point. So to have other black pastors speak to it, I think actually gave a lot of validity to the actual argument instead of a racial component. So I think that was really powerful. Okay, the second C that we want to talk about today is creativity. And I want to talk about Alex Honnold, the famous free solo climber. Did you guys see him climb Taipei 101, the skyscraper?
No.
Yes, and that was absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely
It was
bonkers.
Crazy.
It's one of the tallest structures in the world. Like for a while, it was the tallest before Burj and Burj Khalifa and these other ones. Incredibly tall.
Oh, it was wild.
Started on the ground, and it was like live streamed on Netflix. And dude, there were people in their office building the whole way up, just with phones on the outside of the glass like this. It was crazy. Yeah. Could you imagine? It's different than climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a different design. He actually was choosing more difficult routes.
Yeah.
There was like slats, like the slats behind you guys, but turned otherwise. It was like, it's like a natural ladder.
Yeah.
He's like, doesn't use that at all. He goes on the outside. It's like doing this crazy stuff.
That's wild.
Incredible. Dude, if you're afraid of heights, dude, watch it. It'll shock you. It is incredibly awesome. I don't mind heights. I've climbed a bunch of high stuff, jumped out of a plane, done a bunch of things like that. And, snowboarded the Alps on the very tippy top above the tree line. Dude, that thing freaked me out, dude. Like watching certain shots of this, I was like, this man is wild.
It was crazy. It immediately reminded me of the Wire Walker in between the Twin Towers, where it was like, it was a huge public event. And they made a movie about it, didn't they? Yeah. And I was just like, dude, for people that are in that part of the world, like that is definitely something they're going to remember for decades, because you're going up one of the tallest structures, and nobody in today's world in their right mind usually has an idea to do something like that because they know the ramifications that are coming from it. And I'm assuming he got arrested.
No. Did he not? It was
a public stunt.
Yeah, he did this. Like, dude, that's the wildest thing, is that he's free soloing. There's no rope. Like, it's on live. So it's like, dude, the threat of it was everybody was watching, because the threat of him like taking the tumble is real. And this is the guy who's been pushing it. There's a lot of people famous out there, but he's one of the most famous for doing this because of free solo and this. But the difference is the mountain is not taking a picture of you the whole time.
No.
Whereas this time, like, there's people on the other side of the glass that are like waving and knocking, and he's like, hey, he's like holding on one hand. Or like, there was one point I saw where he actually locked his feet in and leaned back like this and shook his arms out to get blood flow. I'm like, bro, you are 1,000 feet off the ground.
He almost hung upside down like a bat. It was wild work. I was like, there's no way he's doing this.
Those kind of mountain climbers, though, they are just a little bit, there's something different in their brain. There's something that just doesn't fire or fires extra or something. We knew a guy back in high school. His name
shout out Matt
Ingbring. This guy, man, he was a national championship climber as a high schooler when we were. Sure. And he was on the swim team with us, and I loved going to other pools and stuff because you would inevitably hear, Matt, get off of that, because he would be climbing up something that had no place to climb. And so he would take the most difficult route to places, and you just see him hanging from stuff, and it's like Spider-Man. It's very, very fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, he was on my bus route whenever I was a freshman in the beginning of sophomore year before I started driving. My birthday's in March, so I'm like had to wait through the whole fall, and so we were, sophomore year. He's a year underneath me, so he was a freshman. We were on the same bus, and so we're taking it. We have to wait. The bus is long, and we were on the end of the route, and so we go by his house, and he would open the garage before the bus pulls away, because the way the route went, you had to double back past his house. His garage was completely built all the way across from wall to wall and across the ceiling with undulation and with grips. And he would start on a certain color, sitting on his butt on the floor. And he would start and pull himself onto the wall and then monkey across it and across the ceiling upside down. And I mean, Matt was crazy strong.
He was incredible to watch.
He was one of the people that he was actually, remember that massive wave that happened in Thailand and Japan, and that tsunami that happened. the terrible one that took out all those people that were at the things. He was climbing on a seaside mountain at the time. I saw this whole posting about it. I was like, what?
Wow.
So he was like on the hill or on like holding on the cliff, which is crazy. I think he was one of the first people. He's one of the reasons that all live sports have like a delay. Because he was, I think when he was on ESPN for doing X Games or something, he was speed climbing and made some mess up. Now he was climbing with a rope. Yeah. He made some mess up and he missed his handhold. He went to do like a big dyno, like a big jump. And as he goes, he swings and he gripped it or whatever, like swung off. So he just lets out like an expletive, like really loud, and they did not catch it. And it's like, bleep.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
That's funny.
But that made me think of this guy, Alex, and I was thinking about, dude, I'm seeing all these like people that are streaming it, and tons of like the media here was just taking screenshots of or videos of like private citizens who were just like holding their phone up. It's so wild, man. Because they're just like, he's 1,000 feet up, he's just waving at people. They're on the other side of the glass, like with their phone pressed up.
Yeah, there you go.
It's crazy, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, super, super wild. So shout out to Alex, dude. Praying for you, man.
Yeah.
But he would talk about how they're like, people are like, oh, his amygdala doesn't fire and all this stuff. It's like, he said, no, you just get so used to it that, yeah, you're afraid. You're afraid. And then like the things like you just start getting so used to these things that it just,
wow.
you get very used to. I'm like, man, this guy's incredible.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Incredible. Hey, another piece of creativity. China, one of their cool things that they did is they made a passenger tunnel. So not for cars, but for passengers from Shanghai to the other side of the water there, the river. And I sent that to you guys. Do you guys get to take a chance to see it? The LED wrapped tunnel.
I saw it. It's incredible, man.
Crazy.
It's amazing to see. We were kind of talking about this the other day, that it's amazing what can happen when leadership doesn't have, the same kind of structure that we have.
The infighting, the back and forth.
Yeah, when you've got a few people at the top who can make changes however they want, you get places like China that it's the future. Because they go through and they do what they want. You know, but it was wild to see. I mean, I'd rather go there, I think, than Disneyland. You don't have to wait in the same lines, and you get to see all the flashing stuff. And
this is pretty cool, man.
Yeah,
pretty crazy. And the thing is, it's like an American thing. That would have taken 15 years and been like 40 million over budget. That it would have been all fraudulent, and not just that, but they would have been in the dark.
Yeah.
And this place is all wrapped in light and done like in a really quick time frame.
Yeah, no leaks and duct tape.
Yeah, exactly. Jaden, you get a chance to see it. What do you think, man?
And no, I was trying to look for it, but I haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. But it's a tunnel in Shanghai from one side to the other. It's from the counting countries, which I like to follow him.
Yeah,
he was on the Beast Games, first season of Beast Games. Counting countries was, but it's somebody I followed on YouTube and then Instagram. A traveler guy, very cool guy. And kind of follow along with his journey doing that. But he was there in Shanghai and took this piece, and I'll send it to you guys so you guys can take a look at it.
That is wild.
Yeah. Did you see it?
That thing is crazy.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So counting countries, pretty awesome. Hey, we're on the China thing. We've been talking a lot about their robots and implementation there, which has been the cars doing all the delivery cars with no drivers who've been having problems and stuff. But one of the things that's really been sped up there is their automated warehouses. Now, we have warehouses here that are very automated, especially Amazon. Amazon just went through a whole other round of layoffs as it automated more of their warehouses. But China has 100% automated warehouses. There is no people working in them. The only people that work there are techs to both say where things go for processes and fix the robots. Besides that, it's just on the floor, just automated. Yeah. How crazy is that?
Yeah, I'm not for it because I've already experienced that. I've ordered a couple of things, that I did not expect was looking back, I should have expected it was coming from China.
Okay.
And so there was one thing that I ordered, and I'm now knowing that it's automated. What happened was a barcode probably got misscanned. I got the wrong item.
Yep.
And there's no way to contact them to send it back. So I'm stuck with the wrong item. I can't get a refund or any of that. And it's yours now. Yeah. So
congratulations.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
The robot does not care. And there's no customer complaint department or feedback for the robot section. You can't talk to the techs. It's just,
That's true.
So
that's true.
Risk it, buy at your own risk, I guess.
Javen, you seen it?
The automated warehouse. I have not seen like an actual video on it, but just in theory, noticing what China's been able to do over these past few years does not seem out of their wheelhouse at all.
No.
And honestly, I think because of how advanced their automation has been, it's probably more reliable than anything that the US will put out within the next 5 years or so, as far as like full automation goes.
Right.
And I think just over time, they'll probably get more efficient, and like the barcode issues that you're talking about, or maybe inventory issues, things like that, will just get settled over time because of how automated it's being, and people going in and doing like routine checkups, things like that. So over time, we'll probably see more full automated warehouses like that, and it just be like a completely normal thing, at least overseas, for production and things like that.
I think it's going to come here too. I think it's going to come fast to try to eliminate. So it's going to be really interesting because that's an entry job for some people. I mean, they're making, $16 to $18 an hour and do that type of stuff. So it's going to be a shift for sure.
100%.
I think once we see the bugs worked out, like you're talking about in those smaller markets, then we'll see, once it's been perfected and everything, that's when we'll see it
kind
rolled
of
out here.
Apple model of let everybody else make the iterations and then we're going to perfect it.
Exactly. Because then they don't have to pay for all of the front end problems,
learning
and all of that. Yeah.
That's a great point. Hey, I'll jump down to this and we'll talk about it, but Arizona, our state, is actually suing Temu because of fraud. So I was thinking about the things you got. I don't know if you got it from Temu, but the things that they're saying is that Temu is fraudulent, and our state is suing Temu because of their fraudulent activity and what they've been sending to people and all these things.
Yeah, I saw that recently too. I did not order through Temu because I'd heard early on about all the spyware capabilities and stuff, and that's really what they're going after them for, is because of the spyware tech and stuff that's on it. And so I think that it's great. Hopefully, we see it across larger swaths, so that there can be some accountability for things like this. I mean, it gets really dicey the more you start dealing with China, and so and now with tariffs and things like that, they don't necessarily want to play as nice.
No,
true. And so it's like, okay, fine, you want it. I'm gonna cough on it first. Do you still want it?
Yeah.
So.
The Temu stuff is hilarious because it's like the most ridiculous version of stuff that you can order. Like people not paying attention to sizing because America doesn't normally use metric. They're not paying attention to the things and they're buying stuff. It's like a couch for $100 and it comes back and it's like doll furniture, other things like that. Jay, have you seen anything, anybody's that have bought from Temu?
Oh yeah. I have a few friends that bought like a few things from Temu here and there. I think my friend back in 2023 actually had his order completely stolen by Somalian pirates, and they sent him an email about it. They're like,
are you serious?
I swear, they're like,
so funny.
Or no, maybe this is just like a conversation we were having with him, but he didn't. There's no package insurance for anything that you have, so you don't get a refund for anything. It's like by your own risk, basically working the same way as like eBay or something like that.
Sure.
Or oh, what was the other one?
Which
I think it was
I think they have package protection stuff. They've changed a lot of that stuff. Early doors.
I think it was like Alibaba does the same thing, and same with like there's some U.S. market. Oh, Depop. You can't do like refunds and things like that. So I've also seen resellers that will like buy things from China and then sell it like it's the real product, and people are like, okay,
on Depop,
but they'll sell it for a markdown from what the original price is. So let's say it's like AirPods, they'll sell them for $50, even though they bought a whole pack of like 100 of them for maybe,
and they're not real.
No, but they're close to being real because they're made like in China or whatever. But it's definitely interesting. But I mean, if that's true about the Somalian pirates, it would not surprise me, just because it's all wild work.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, some of those paths, depending on where it was coming from in China.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely could have taken that route past Somalia, but that's pretty wild.
Well, it's so funny how the more we've progressed in society, the more we've gone back to like the East India Trading Company, where it's like, sorry, I don't know, your shipment's gone. There was a storm at sea, and your stuff's gone.
Exactly.
Sorry,
dude. I think about that massive wave that hit that container ship with all those exotic cars on it. Did you see that? There was like 250 cars that just end up in the bottom of the ocean. It's like Lambos and Bugattis and crazy stuff. I was like, what happened?
Wow.
Just to imagine all those things. That would be a sick scuba dive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If it was like within range, you know what I mean? Like go down 80 feet and you're just like going through containers, checking out, sitting in Bugattis in your scuba
Seeing
set.
a shark in there,
totally. Just chilling. Okay, we're off the rails. Hey, I want to talk about France. I thought this was really funny. It's very French. this guy named Mathieu Tremblin. He does a project called Tag Clouds, where if you don't know, in France, unlike America, in Arizona, then we just paint over everything. Like there's a lot of graffiti here. We have spray trucks that run all the time, and they kind of repaint it like a camel brown color. So everything's sprayed the same color until they'll paint right over the top of this spray paint. And it's like, it'll only be up for a little while. So it gets paint over. In France, whenever we'd be on the train line, the graffiti's there forever. Yeah. They never paint over it. Like it's not a thing they spend money on. So like a lot of graffiti, it's up to the store owner or it's up to the municipality to do it. A lot of times they're not doing it. And so the whole train lines would be all tagged almost the whole way down. It was pretty impressive. And some people got up, man, like meaning they had tags everywhere. I'd be on trains across the city in both directions. I'd see the same people. I'm like, man, these guys are out here, man. Yeah. They're just like putting up tags everywhere, like every stop or in between stops. Really crazy. This guy, Matthew, he goes in and he does a project called Tag Clouds where he's painting over graffiti and replacing it with legible text. Which I thought was hilarious. So I sent it to you guys, but it's like this whole concept of it'll be like, let's say, like a pull down like safety door for like a business, and it'll have people have tagged a bunch of random stuff. So he'll paint over it, but then he'll replace it with like the similar color paint, but actually just written in very clear font, like a Helvetica or like a Times New Roman or whatever he just put out. So it'd be like Kings, and he just put Kings in purple or whatever color they were tagging in. It was hilarious. I was like, this is really so French.
I saw that. I didn't realize that was something real. I thought somebody had just done that digitally. That makes it even more funny. Like, so he used an emoji, but using the old type with the semicolon and everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's very funny. So I mean, it looks nice. It looks different. It's kind of an interesting and funny concept, but yeah.
I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, man, well, to go to all that effort to paint over it all and then reset it is it's very funny. Yeah. I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I've seen it actually hitting in church world a lot now, where it's like they're going to people on team and they're asking them what year they were born in. Did we talk about this?
No. Oh, yes.
Dudes, I know we've talked about it, but it's like, so they walk into a place and they would have a camera and they'd be like, hey, like Javen, what year are you born in?
2007.
They're like, okay, great. Angus, what year are you born in?
19.
And so they go into Jurassic Park, or I've seen them do it in church teams. And like it'll have that. It'd be like someone born in the 2000 era, and then someone born in 19. As soon as they go say 19, people they go to like Jesus, like this, the disciples. They go to like Abraham. They go to Moses. They go all sorts of crazy throwbacks. All this old timey music, which is really funny. Seen him do the president montage as well, where they put them with the founding fathers, or they put them with like George Washington crossing the Delaware, like some crazy thing. So it is very entertaining. It also makes me feel ancient.
Yeah.
So I understand where they're coming from. I've seen the other version not be as popular, but I'd be like, Angus, what year were you born in?
19.
Yeah,
82.
Whatever. And they'd be like, great. Javen, what year are you born in?
2007. Yeah.
It's like baby cuts and all these other things. It's like, just the flip, which I thought was pretty funny. So
I feel bad for the person born in 99 that they have to endure all of it, but it was just right there, like the December babies of 99. It's like, man, now because you came just a little early.
That's right.
You're lumped in with a whole other category.
Told your mama to hold out.
Yeah.
That was a big deal here. I know there was like the first baby born in every place. Obviously, that was a big deal on how they said what they were doing, which was pretty cool. To be like the first baby born in the millennia would be pretty wild.
Yeah.
So we have a school that's nearby us that it changed over and became a high school, like its own high school. It used to be part of another campus of a different high school that we both attended. And so it became Millennium because it was there in the year 2000s when it first started. So a lot of that kind of stuff was going on at that time.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. Hey, one of the things that we saw happen, that we're talking about just in what's been going on around us in creativity, is that, man, a lot of people have been shifting what they're doing with their money into gold. And gold has like hit an all-time price of $5,000 an ounce. You guys been paying attention to that at all?
So crazy. Yeah.
A little bit here and there. I know for like that and silver, they've just been skyrocketing over these last few months because they're like really the only thing that's kind of been stable within the recent economy.
Yep.
So everybody's just pouring everything they have into like actual physical gold and silver.
I was with my neighbor yesterday, shout out Ernie, and he wanted to buy like a table set. And so he went to go do that. And he, instead of going into his cash reserves, he actually sold a 10-ounce bar of silver to a colleague at work. He sold it for $1,000, which is the spot price right now for silver. and in doing so was able to pay for this table set that he wanted or whatever it was.
Wow.
But I'm like, dude, how much did you pay for that originally? Because he was buying it and stacking it up back in the day. He's got a bunch of silver and gold, and he's like, oh, I got that for $80.
Wow.
Dude.
So it's like, man, like the come up on that is crazy because he bought
That
it
is
so
wild.
long ago whenever the price obviously is really low per ounce. And so for him to have a 10-ounce bar, I'm like, man, shout out to him and others that are doing that arbitrage right now where it's like, hey, they bought lower, they're selling back. Even 2 years ago, you could get a gold bar at Costco for $2,500.
That's crazy.
And now it's selling for $5,000. So you double your money, but just by holding it for a few years. So
Wow.
pretty interesting to see. And this is a result of all the banks and countries stockpiling gold as a hedge against inflation with the US dollar worldwide. And specifically because the BRICS countries are trying to roll out their own currency to rival the dollar based on gold. But, you know, the big snafu was all the gold that they were banking on coming from Venezuela. And obviously with the change in power in Venezuela, with Maduro not being there, it's changed how things go. So now, you know, the gold chain that some of these pastors had that we talked about from the last weeks, maybe it wasn't a bad shout. You
Yeah,
know, maybe
right.
we should have all been buying gold chains and
Sure.
wearing something. No, but it's interesting to think about, you know, going back to that sink of wealth, which is back to silver and gold. And, you know, the Bible talking so much about things like gold and in us talking about how everything belongs to the Lord and how the Lord is not impressed by gold. He paves the street with it. So
You see, and with it climbing and stuff, I just, because I know what it says in Revelation that eventually that gold is going to, you know, bread will be worth more than that.
For sure.
You know, and so I just think what price is that going to be? Like, where is it? And then how heavily invested will some people be in it?
yeah,
And not be watching the other way because you can't eat gold.
no, that's true.
You know, and so it's just, I wish I was riding the wave all the way up
For sure.
and all that, but since I haven't, it gives me time to ponder what it's going to look like in the future.
Yeah, no, I know the Lord help us, man. Obviously, it's our heart that, you know, come Lord Jesus, come Lord Jesus. But yeah, interesting. So shout out to all the gold bugs out there who are being proven right this year and last year in the crazy escalation of all this stuff, and those who've been holding on to metal instead of precious metals instead of money, you know, like as far as dollars. Now it's kind of showing out that they have some advantage here, which has been interesting. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes forward going in the future, because you can't, like you said, you still can't take a bar of gold to the store and get food. So
Sure.
it'd be interesting to see how that looks or what happens from that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, one of the things that Angus brought to us was this pre-crime database. You want to explain it to us?
Yeah, so there's a movie, if you haven't seen it, it's got Tom Cruise in it.
Minority Report.
Minority Report. It's about precognition, where there's these three beings that basically they together they can see into the future possible actions, and what they do is if two out of the three agree, they can arrest you on a crime that they think you'll commit.
Right.
And so they were just talking about at the World Economic Forum and
Davos and
and
stuff,
Davos and all of these things that this precognition, and what it does is it uses all this AI data points and stuff from across social media and trends and things like that to see how likely you are to commit a crime or a violation or whatnot. And so it takes steps to keep you in line. And so it all goes into plays into this idea of your carbon credits and, you know, having digital IDs and all of that stuff, because if they see your behavior online and they think, oh, you might do something that we don't agree with, they can shut you down before you have the chance to even do it.
Yeah, really wild. I was just like, whew.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty crazy. So heaven help us in that regard, because we want to be those who are paying attention to this kind of stuff, because, you know, to be judged on what you might do is an insane concept.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes against the very, you know, rights that we have, presumed innocent until proven guilty, etc. So that kind of thing freaks me out, man.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
Well, I mean, it curbs free will too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to essentially be like a algorithm for the way we live, and it will make an alignment, but based on what you're doing and how you operate. So, heaven help us, man, to be those that are paying attention as these things start to roll out and still fight for our freedom.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Hey, I want to shift a little bit, talk about the third C today, which is community. As a community of faith, we've been doing 21 days of fasting and prayer. I was talking with a friend, shout out to Pastor Raul at Revolution Church, and they're headed out today to go do some missional work across the world. So praying that they have just great trip and really powerful things, and with some friends across the world, which we were previously there on this trip last year. So it's cool for them to be a part of it. But they just got finished with their 21-day fast, and we have 1 week left for ours. He was just telling me and sharing with me how they've had a lot of great breakthrough with their church and a real good reset for the year. And I feel the same. I feel like it's been a really high point for us, and a lot of people talking about it. And then I loved on Sunday how, it's something that we had dialogued here, even on the podcast, how we shared that with people. It's like, listen, hey, restart. if you had food fall into your mouth accidentally, like restart and do this kind of stuff. What'd you guys take on the fast?
It's been great. I mean, for me especially, I think going without food for that prolonged period only contributes to the amount of patience you have, the real willingness that you have to get things done. And I think there's just a lot of spiritual clarity that goes on too, like within these last within these last few weeks. I think you just kind of like, without food or without really setting your mind to kind of just the autonomous nature of like what your normal schedule is, and really like taking that time to set aside where you're not really eating or you're not drinking something or like just sitting down enjoying something. It really gives you time to process and also get in the word or pray just about things that are happening within the modern day. Like there's so much going on, all related to spiritual warfare, all related to things that we see being potential fulfillments of things like in Revelation. And so there's just so much to consider and so much to process, that at this time, what we really need is patience and prayer and guidance from the Lord. So I think fasting has been really good, especially at the start of this year, where we've seen a lot of things go on within the past few months, to kind of just mentally reset, but also spiritually reset in that regard. And I think these last 3-4 days, it's just going to continue to kind of compound on what's been happening. And it's been a great experience for me. So I'm glad I participated in it.
Awesome. Angus, what about you, man?
I would agree. I'd say, because every fast is different. And so this one, I wasn't necessarily seeking any big answers or anything like that. But one thing that's really stood out to me is the importance of the focus, the why. Why are you doing this, and what's the purpose of it? Because if you don't have that why, then you're just starving yourself or denying for no reason. And if you don't know the why, you also don't know if you're progressing towards it. So you don't know if you're doing any of that. And so, because there's several times during this fast that just life happened, some big things in my life that it would have been very easy to just go, you know what, I'm going to pick something easy this time, and I'm just going to fast this show or that, which would be kind of a cop out to me. And so for me, when I have had to reset and do those kinds of things, it's like, okay, but why am I resetting? Why is it important that I reset and that I finish this out and still finish strong, no matter what's happened up to this point? And so that was has been a good overarching reminder for me, is make sure you know your why.
I love that. It's been really good for me as well. I agree with both of you guys. It's both the challenge and also the encouragement, because there's been kind of waves of breakthrough that have happened for me, even in this one on clarity and a bunch of other things. And, one of the things that I want to be as a leader is I want to be someone who is doing exactly what I asked other people to do and leading the way in that. And so, with the opportunity to bow out because of this or that or other things that have come up, and it's like, no, I'm just going to choose to not do that and just kind of keep the way. And that's been really good, been really positive. And I've really had that extra time to spend with the Lord and focus in on some things and really kind of hearing for this year. As a pastor, you want things to grow, you want things to do well. And so there was a little bit of kind of the last quarter of the year, because of things that happened with some leader stuff that happened with us and some other things that have been happening. I'm like, man, it feels like it's all kind of coming at the same time. And those things have solved themselves out. I'm thankful for that in the beginning of this year, which has been great. But at the end of last year, it felt like a lot of pressure. And I was like, we were really hoping for these bigger things to happen that didn't quite happen the same way. Though we were really good, it wasn't as grand as I wanted it to be. And it was like, man. And it's like the Lord just kind of reset me. He's like, no, it's about doing what I asked you to do today. And I was like, ooh, because you overestimate what you can do, but you underestimate what you can do in a day. Because it's like, man, if you're consistent in these things, it's like, the Lord help us, to do your will, and over time, those greater things are done. So I think it's the other way. It's like you overestimate what you can do in a day, but you underestimate what you can do in consistency. So it's like, let's be those people that are consistent, because the greater things will happen. Yeah. So powerful. Hey, one of the things we also want to talk about is whenever the funny memes kind of poke a hole at this, and poke holes in kind of a funny way. During one of these things, it's like whenever your pastor tells you to ask you to fast for 21 days at the beginning of the year. Did you see this meme?
Yeah.
I think I sent it to you guys. And it's a woman who's sitting in her car at lunch, and she's about to break into like a nice sandwich, a chicken sandwich, and then her pastor rolls up beside her. And then it's like just cuts of him slowly getting closer and closer to her. And he's looking outside her window. And then he's in like the front of her window. And she's just kind of looking at him the whole way. She's not taking a bite yet. Then he appears in her car. Then he's in front of her face. Hilarious. Yeah. Super, super funny. Definitely would love to have caught somebody like that and done that to them.
What's funny is that people think that we actually observe them like that too.
Right, which is not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. People have come up to me. They've apologized for, this or that. It's like, okay. I had no concept that okay, well,
yeah.
Good luck and
do better.
Restarting,
That's right,
all of that.
better.
But it's funny because people will self-report.
That's so funny, man. Javen, you seen this meme?
I hadn't seen it in person, but I mean, I think definitely people kind of have that preconception about fasting where they feel like there's a bunch of eyes on them all at the same time. And they're like, oh, if I mess up once, like then it's almost like my career as a church person is over in some way.
Sure.
Which I think, but I mean, obviously it's more about the intent behind it. But yeah, that's definitely relatable. So I think that's mad funny.
Pretty great. Hey, the fourth C we want to talk about today is competence, and us looking at some of these books that have been speaking to us. The first one is Winning the War in Your Mind, Craig Rochelle. And the one that we're going to take away today is Declaring Truth. Declaring Truth. And it made me think about times where in the past I believed some fake news and started to share it with other people, and then having to understand that I was actually wrong, and then having to kind of recant that and go back to people and be like, hey, I told you this thing that was an error. And then kind of comparing that to my own story where it's like declaring truth over things I believed about me that were wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that, Javen? You had that happen. I mean, you guys are a little more savvy, your generation, on fake news.
No, but I feel like for us, I mean, there's so much conflicting information that's going on right now. And I think especially in relation kind of politics and spiritual warfare of everything that's happening, not only in Iran, but within America, and people started to notice like ideas behind shadow governments and things like that. There's a real debate between what we can actually view as authentic because of consistent pattern recognition and just our alignment as a Christian community or a body of Christ is who we actually support in terms of everything going on. And I think especially within the realm of Christianity, it gets difficult whenever you do mess up because it has spiritual implications on people. If you are teaching somebody a falsehood or a false doctrine and they end up believing that, and because of that, they think, oh, maybe I can just work my way up to heaven or something like that. Right. And ultimately that person's soul or the reason why they don't end up going to heaven is on you, and you will recant for that in some way later. And I think just the spiritual implications of what goes on and the reason why so many people are like really hesitant to kind of go back and apologize about things like that is because they're banking on the fact that they're not wrong. So differences between doctrines within certain denominations has always kind of been a key component of debate for Christianity. And nobody's really willing to give up any side to somebody else just for the sake that they want to be like, oh yeah, this is the way to follow Christ in that way. Yeah.
Sure.
But I mean, I think the truth lies kind of somewhere in the middle of all of that. And it's been interesting kind of just to see as more people debate, they kind of run circles within their own arguments. And whenever new evidence for something is presented, people are really skeptical of it at first because it contradicts something that they've grown up with.
Of course.
And I mean, I get it to some degree, but it's also at what point do you draw the line and finally put down your own pride or your own sense of identification within that culture because it's what you've always supported into actually aligning yourself within the moral and ethical way that Christ would want you to live. So
that makes sense. Angus, thinking about it in a different way, declaring truth. What about over yourself? Like, do you think there's been things that you believed about yourself that you later had to declare over yourself? Like these things are.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we just talked about this very thing in kids' church on Sunday because it has to do with identity.
Yes.
And who you are. And, we know that God speaks our identity over us through his word, but depending on how long you're in the word, culture and family and friends and all of that are speaking a completely different message sometimes.
That's true.
To you. And so, when you repeat a lie enough, it can become truth,
right,
to the person who's hearing it. And so if you're constantly hearing these things in your head, I heard this one thing that really affected me that says that as the father, you become the internal monologue for your children. Like the voice that they hear in your head will oftentimes be the dad's voice.
Interesting.
And if the dad isn't there, then usually it's the mom. And so how you speak to your kids is how they will process in their internal thoughts. So if you're negative about everything, when they complete a task, they'll fill in the negative thoughts that you were there to do. And so I think about that my voice can become my kid's internal monologue.
Wow.
And therefore the things that internal monologue says is very easy to accept as your truth. And that then becomes a part of who you are. Right. So the things that we say are incredibly important, and the lies that we believe. I've shared this before that, my dad told me I was lazy. And so I just accepted that I was lazy and all of these things. And so because I didn't want that label, I actively worked against it. And it became this thing where it wasn't a healthy thing in my life, because now I don't know how to relax.
Right.
And so there are things like that. And when we say, you'll never amount to this, or you're no good for that, we have to understand and remember as parents and as authority figures in others' lives that it has truth, even if it's peers. We have to remember the relational standing we have to people, because as a pastor, if I say something to somebody, it has potential to wound deeply and permanently, and generationally.
Yeah.
Because if I say something to a dad who then leaves the church, now his kids aren't following Christ, and so we have to be very careful about the truths that we speak to people, but also what we're willing to believe.
Yeah.
And as we recognize that we're hearing something that's not truth, we need to check it against the Word of God.
Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. Yeah, declaring truth is such a huge deal. And to your point, even what Jabin was saying, it's like, hey, being willing to adjust the things that you come to new understanding about, and declaring those other things that you believe before is wrong. Like, for instance, I know many people, good friends of mine, who they believe they can earn their way into God's grace and by being a good person. And I'm like, friends, that doesn't say it anywhere in the book anywhere. Well, because they haven't spent any time in the book, they've only listened to popular people around them that have said, oh yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, if you're a good person, you're going to make it. And it's like, no, you need to embrace Jesus, who is the only way to have a relationship with the living God, and to accept his work on the cross for you. And without doing so, you're not in a place where you have that opportunity. And so I think it's so pivotal that, we be those people that it's both, and that we both take and deal with whenever we're wrong, to come back and say, I'm sorry, and to address it.
Yeah.
And even, even be those that say, hey, this is where we messed up. I mean, we talked about it already with Bethel today. It's like, hey, these guys are saying, hey, we went back and we're sorry. Like, we messed up here. They had taken some right actions, but they missed one key thing. And there's been obviously times in my own leadership and my own life where it's like, I messed up by not taking the full actions. And so the Lord help us to do that and navigate it with both the mercy that we talked about in leading this podcast, and also the tension of the other side of being those who correct whenever we're wrong, and to take that step. You were talking about the voice of the Father. That's really interesting. I think that's true in my own life, as I hear my Father's voice speaking over things in my life. That's very true. Man, I don't know if I was in my feels yesterday or what, but could have been because I was fasting, and you get in a place of transparency. But I was at the end of the day. I got back from the office. I'd been working on a paper really long, and took a break to grab some food. And so it wasn't quite there yet. So I just sat down on the couch and opened up my phone. Was like looking at some reels. One of the reels that came up was actually Steve Harvey, which we all love. Is is a comedian, funny, known as a man who has faith in God. And so he was sharing. It was with a couple guys on a podcast, and he was talking about something really profound. He was saying about the voice of the Father in his life, and how it was so important to him. And he said that when his father died, that it hit him in a different way, because he wouldn't have ever get to hear his father say, I'm proud of you. And the way he said it, it's getting me emotional now. The way he said it, you could tell as a grown man in his upper 50s, he's still walking that out. And how he has now taken and speaking over his children, life and difference, because he was saying, I'm proud of you for who you are and the man you become and what you've done. And to hear those words is so powerful. And doesn't take away from a mother's, impact or anything. Something so profound about your father speaking those words over you. Yeah. And so for you to say that is really interesting. Well, I think it resonates with me.
And I'm glad it does. And to think about it, because it is so important, especially as dads, to remember the quality of words and the things that we're saying, because looking at my internal monologue, I struggle with perfectionism. And that was because so much of it is because when I would bring something to my dad, and instead of saying, great job, and have you thought about this? It was always criticism first, and so a lot of times when I'll do something, I think it's good work, but then the first thing I'll see is the imperfections. And so I criticize my work before I give others the opportunity to even appreciate it, and so that's something that if you allow it to, man, it's crushing, and it can be really burdensome. And I loved my dad. He passed on several years ago, but I wouldn't have said I liked my dad. And growing up with that, and when you leave the house, if that's your internal monologue, you have to have something to flip the script. And so that's where the Holy Spirit and being able to allow the Lord to speak over that. And that's how I'm still working on it, getting all of that to balance out to where when I complete a project, I can hear, "Great job, son," and not the criticism and things like that. And so I try to be very cognizant of that with my kids. But it also speaks to the power of forgiveness and all of those things. And to speak to what Steve Harvey said, I've shared this too, that when my dad passed, we were just starting to really get close and build a relationship. And, with everything that's changed as a result of him passing, and, I wouldn't be in the same place I am now if he was still around, but I'd give it all and change it all for one more hug.
Sure.
Because my dad wasn't super affectionate. I only got a few hugs that I remember in my life. But once he was gone and it was no longer an option, it's like, man, I'd give just about anything to be able to give him one more hug.
Yeah, that's huge, man. It's huge. Declaring truth, man. To win a war in our mind, we got to declare the truth of who God says we are and walk in that truth. Second book we want to look at today is finishing up, actually, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. We've been talking about this from John Maxwell, a pivotal book, a great book that's spoken to so many about leadership and what it means to be those that step up and lead and show that role. The law of legacy is what we're talking about today. The idea that we have to bring up leaders to hand things off to. That's our legacy that we're there with. Javo, what do you think, man, this idea of church transition and handoff? You've kind of seen it firsthand in a couple different instances where we stepped into a pastorate in Alexandria. We obviously were on a team when we were in France and did some handoffs there with different teammates. And then here, back at our home church, seeing that navigation. What's been your insight to it?
I mean, at pretty much every congregation I've been at, I think there's been some sort of handoff in the time that I was there, whether it be that's what you're stepping into or whether it be that's what we're handing off to somebody else.
That's right.
And most of the time it's been both. It's definitely so true, this principle that you essentially have to kind of curate and walk alongside the person that you're tendering to become the new leader, because I think about, like, even biblically, like Jesus, the reason why he was working so heavily with Peter was because he knew that eventually he was going to hand him the keys to the church. And like, he was just really making sure that on that front he was good. And I mean, we know eventually that Peter did have the Spirit in order to be able to lead people like that. And the same thing for Paul the Apostle, as he's going across all these places where he feels like certain people are called to certain areas or are able to lead within this regard. He leaves them alone and then continues his ministry.
Yeah, it's great.
And even for us, I mean, like, even for you to be able to step into your dad's shoes has been such a huge thing, because you were there since the time you were 6 years old. Whether or not you went somewhere else for a certain period of time, I think it was like total of 7 years or so, you were still alongside him within that process. And he was teaching you how the church works, teaching you how to step into that role of leadership. And I mean, you took the mantle at the Bridge, you took the mantle at ACC, And we're also able to hand off that mantle to somebody else that we felt was qualified to do so, which I think it's great. And it's the way that church leadership should be done, because when you kind of leave with no solution, then it leaves the church in disarray, and it just leads to a whole bunch of complications later down the road. So I think working alongside with somebody that you feel the real Spirit of God hovering upon, but also that you have a real confidence is able to learn and work alongside you and be agreeable in that process is such a huge thing to maintain church stability, but also to have it grow exponentially going forward.
Huge deal. And I would say to that end, I mean, that was a blessing that we had in those places. So in France, I'm part of the team that started the church and then led a season of that church, and then handed it back off to colleagues and handed it back to them, and able to do that handoff where it had a smooth transition where we were there one Sunday, they were there the next Sunday. There was no gap. And so we were able to do that. In the case of Alexandria Community Church, we gave the people a heads up, like, hey, we're gonna actually move on from this location, and not knowing where that was going to be next, but we wanted to set up the next people. So man, paying off, the apartment and having all the things set up for them is a huge difference. It enabled that family that followed us, which are still there today, it enabled them to step up and to say yes, because if they didn't have those things, they couldn't have said yes. So it was awesome that we were able to make decisions that actually gave a longevity of leadership to the church by the decisions that we were making. That's a legacy piece that we were putting in place that didn't just affect us, which it was beneficial to us, but it was even more beneficial for the future whenever we weren't there. Because it set them in the right place.
Absolutely.
I'll say that's the case that I came into here, was doing the handoff from my dad was interesting. Angus, you lived it with me. You were the only one, actually, I think the only person that's been on staff the whole time as we've transitioned everybody over, and it's just people moving and doing different things and going on to different roles. So very interesting, man, in this shift. What was it like from your perspective, having been someone who's there and then now in a different season?
Well, it's been neat to have a front row seat to it, because, you see handoffs all the time, and like in the Olympics, when that handoff is coming, there's this moment of you kind of hold your breath because you don't know if the next guy's going to drop it or whatever. Right. And the same thing happens in the church world, but has far larger implications. And we've seen and thankfully have learned from others who have not necessarily done the best, or who recognize, hey, you know what, this is how I would do it different. And so I'm very thankful for other pastors who've shared their experiences and just been transparent when things haven't gone the way that they had hoped, so that other people can. But I'd say that this transition went as smooth as any transition can go. I mean, there's obviously always shaking and stuff that happens as people decide, hey, can I follow this new leader and everything? But it also helps when you've got the previous guy willing to let go of the baton.
Yeah, huge.
And so like that was incredible that Pastor Rich was able. He let go of the baton, but he didn't also just say, I'm out and move across the country and disassociate. He's still here. He's still a part of the life of the church, and he's still a valuable member of our church. And so that shows our congregation that we value what came before and all of that. So it speaks to all of those things. But then there's also the part of the transition and the handoff where, what they handed you was a paid off building.
We were able to pay it off the first year I was here.
Huge. And so it was like very early on. So that affords you to be able to do the next thing and hopefully hand off, to the next person, whoever that is, something even greater than you received. And it's not like, your dad's not upset that things are progressing and that you built the balcony, which was a dream in his heart.
Right.
He celebrates with you, and so there shouldn't be this, and there hasn't been this idea that, well, I would have done it this way, or if he was doing better. It's very supportive, one supporting the next. And I think that that's so crucial. And so it's been, that's why I'm still here, is because it was a healthy transition. And not to say that other people aren't, because of that, life pulled them. But, if it was an unhealthy thing, it would have been unhealthy for me as a person and then as my family. And I don't need that.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I'm very thankful that transition happened so I could stay at home.
Yeah, for sure. Home church, stepping up into role as a pastor here, et cetera, changing roles. And I'll say, the navigation of that was not easy. We knew it wouldn't be. I was thankful that I had experience in leading other places and other communities of faith, that I had opportunity to know what it's like to be a teammate and then step up into the role. I knew what it was like to do handoffs. And so the anticipation, this one took longer than we thought, but it's because 6 months into it, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit longer. I came on essentially, which was interesting, coming from a lead person into being an executive pastor, where you're essentially like a number 2 that's helping run team and some other things there. So I got to operationally run the spot from the initial, but you're not the one that's the key speaker. You're not the one that's the key decision maker. It still needs to go to the lead pastor. And then stepping into a co-pastor role was very interesting in navigating things out. Now, I had worked for my father previously before I went to missions. So even though we were in missions for over 10 years and gone away from the church, like I'd worked for him. So I knew how he operates. I know what's going on. I know how Rich Brown does his stuff. And my mom is on team as well, and all those things. So as the founding pastors, and then navigating that whole thing coming back was really interesting, because now you have a big worldview, a lot of experience, and it's way different than when I was a youth pastor here coming out of corporate sales. So I had a different perspective that way too. And it was funny because I'm very much more like him in personality. So not as much, but definitely more like an A-type in my work stuff, kind of a fun, sanguine, type C type person in my family life and my personal life, like just have fun, hang out. But it's the other side. Whenever I get in work, I'm like, click, let's go. Yeah. And he's like probably 90% there. Like he's on that side. So I was able to operate with him, thinking of our friend Rosie, who was with us for years, and they moved to Texas, and helping, navigate all these changes that we implemented. And because she's like him and I'm like him, and we were able to navigate this together, we understood how the grind worked against each other and how sometimes that would be how it works. It worked well because we were able to do that together. And so we were able to navigate and to make those changes and transitions. And even as people stepped off team and then new people came up, it was really cool to have that piece where it's like, okay, hey, we're running this thing together. And we knew there'd be 3 shakes. At least I always feel there's 3 shakes. There's the shake of the announcement of the new leader, because people see you on the surface, and whether they have any interaction with you at all, they're like, nope, I'm out. It's like, bye. So they jump and go. Or you have the next version of that is like, maybe not at the announcement, but then when the implementation happens, like when you first are there, they're like, no, now it's time to go. Now that it's actually happening, I'm out. So that's the second one. The third one is actually a season after you've been there. They're going to wait for it to see how it goes. And some people shake out. So it's like a third shake is a little longer, because it takes, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's just a month, maybe it's a year, but they want to know how it's going to go and what's going to be expected here. And then they're going to shake out too. And so we've seen that happen, and none of those things are wrong necessarily, because the community of faith is something you want to be active in your life with others. And so that's a really important piece. But definitely important to have the handoff be correct. Yeah. And that legacy piece is so important.
Well, and something for those people who will never be on that church leadership side and think, well, this may not apply. I've seen that same thing happen in other organizations with leadership changes. I've seen it at schools. I've seen it in theater departments. I've seen it in all those places, and it's exactly that pattern. It looks different, and it comes out differently. Because sometimes you don't have Jesus at the center of it, but
correct.
If you understand, like if you're in a position where, there's a leadership change above you, some of these things can apply. And so, evaluate yourself. Are you going to be in one of those shakes, or are you going to see it through? And where do you see yourself in those? But if you know that that's a potential on the horizon, you can be more prepared for it. So you're not in the middle of this chaos going, why is everybody leaving? It's like, oh, yeah, we probably knew they were going to leave, and we're probably going to have some more, and then you can prepare for it. So it's not as traumatic.
Well, and I think a person that will prepare for legacy, meaning bring a person up alongside them or do a handoff the way that you guys have been talking about, is someone who is secure in who they are. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not secure, you can't bring team on to do it. Yeah. Because that's not how that works. You want to be the one that's the focus. You want to be the one that's the strength, etc. And if you're going to be willing to really let go of the baton and give it to them, then you have to be willing to be someone who's secure in who you are and what you're doing going forward. Mm-hmm. And so the Lord help us as we do those things, to be those people that are cheering on those that we transition things to. And even in ministries, we've seen like a ministry go from one leader to the next. And I've seen really encouraging things with that, where the previous leader really encourages the one behind them. I love that. And then I've seen the other way, or even in church world, where they're picking apart the decisions like you talked about, picking apart the decisions the other person's making. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
If you were that wrapped up in it, you should still do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, it's called for a season for each of us in that way. And the Lord help us to do our best to be those that declare the truth over our circumstances we talked about with Grishel, and then be those that leave that law of legacy, that live with that and bring up people alongside, because that's how we have a greater impact, is be those who can slingshot people past even the things that we have done.
Mm-hmm.
I want greater things for this church and for my children and for the people going forward than anything that I have done in my ministry or that my dad has seen in his ministry. And so the Lord help us to be those people who have that kind of impact.
Yeah.
Hey, one word to leave the podcast today. You got one? Shaven was locked in.
We'll go truth.
Love it.
Perseverance.
I'm going to say legacy. Friends, thanks so much for joining us today and being a part of the collective. Much love to you, wherever you are.